Hey everyone, we are just waiting a couple minutes for everyone to join. I'll just introduce myself really quickly. I'm Jagisha. I'm an enterprise account manager here at ScreenCloud. And then we have Kaylee on here as well. So in the meantime, while we wait, how about everyone just comment where you're from? So maybe we can practice the comment feature in the meantime. Wow, we have people from a lot of different places. I love it. Oh, this is so fun.
Lots of folks from the UK. Hello to our friends across the pond. And we'll wait one more minute and we'll go ahead and get started at 3 after the hour. And if you have just joined us, we'd love to hear where you are joining from if you'd like to post that in the audience chat. Okay, wonderful. Well, we will go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. My name is Kaylee Bede and I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at ScreenCloud.
And I'm Jagisha. I'm an enterprise account manager here at ScreenCloud. And we're so excited to be presenting today on Illuminating Your Message, which is honestly just a fancy way of saying how to build a content strategy that really works. So if you have any questions during the presentation, we just practiced the chat box feature, so feel free to put them in there and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation.
And over the next 45 minutes, we'll break down how to transform your digital displays from background noise to powerful communication hubs, ensuring every pixel earns its keep with an end goal of fostering engagement and driving real impact with your screen content.
So we'll start with a quick overview of what we hope you'll gain from this session. We'll be providing a practical framework to help guide your content strategy, and that's what we'll be using throughout the presentation. To go with that, we're going to give you tools available within our ScreenCloud platform for matching the right message to the right people. We'll also give you tips for creating content that's relevant to you and your audience. And lastly, I think what a lot of people look for, real world examples from organizations just like yours. So whether you're managing 10 screens or 8,000, today's session is designed to help you scale smart.
And you may be asking yourself, does having a content strategy really matter? We hope not, since you signed up for this webinar, but maybe that thought has crossed your mind. And to that, I'll respond with a quote from Professor Lee Bowman, who wrote, "A vision without strategy remains an illusion." And digital signage is no different. It has the power to be your ultimate communication tool, especially when compared to other traditional communication methods, but only if it's part of a thoughtful strategy. And here's why that matters. If you look at some of the stats here, you'll see that 65% of people are visual learners, and digital signage has an 83% recall rate compared to 45% for traditional print. But this last stat, I think, really hits home. Digital signage captures 4 times more views than static content. But if you don't plan it, screen content becomes noise instead of value. Today, we want you to think like a marketer. getting the right message to the right audience at the right time in the right place.
So we'll start with the framework we'll be using to guide you in creating this content strategy. We've tried to simplify the concept by applying it to the idea of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. I'm sure you recognize these from grade school, but today they're going to help provide a simple framework to help us think through communication planning. They'll be the foundation of a signage strategy that drives real results. So with that, we'll start with the first W, the why, which is also your objective. Your objective is going to help create the rest of your content strategy. So think about it. What do you want your screens to help you achieve? There are some common objectives we've seen throughout our customers. So there are things like what you see on the screen, improving internal communication, reducing safety incidences, increasing sales, boosting morale within employees. And I can also talk through a quick example. So you could think of one leadership priority you know your company has this quarter. Could your screen support that? And that could become your content anchor. So for example, we had one customer who wanted to achieve better participation in their biannual company survey. So what they decided to do was incorporate digital signage reminders to their employees, and they actually did see a boost in participation compared to the survey prior. So let's chat through some other ways you can find your why or your objective. You can try auditing your internal emails. What messages are you sending to your employees or your customers that really aren't being opened? That's probably perfect for the screen because it's a visual reminder right in front of them that they can't ignore. You could also survey internal managers to ask what kind of questions they receive most often from employees to find knowledge gaps that may be occurring. These could go up as reminders on the screen and really field those questions for your managers. Lastly, understanding what messages aren't reaching your audience or the areas where they're looking for more information, it can really help shape your objective for getting maximum impact.
We've considered the why. Now let's talk about the who. Screens aren't for everyone, they're for someone. And that someone looks different across your organization. To make your signage strategy effective, you first need to identify your key audience groups. And more importantly, understand what they need in order to do their jobs better, feel more informed, or stay safe. Consider asking who walks past your screens daily and what challenges are they facing. Also consider what decisions they need to make and what information they need to support those decisions. For example, office teams often rely on company-wide updates or HR reminders that help them stay connected and informed, while visitors likely need guidance on where to go, how to check in, or what to expect. One trick for segmenting your audience: create mini personas for each. Creating personas can provide a human face for abstract data and allow you to imagine those personas' daily routines, information needs, and the distractions they face. You can also use AI prompts to build these personas out even further. Here is an example prompt that can be fed into the AI generator of your choice to help expand on your own personas. And to take this a step further, we've developed a few example mini personas based on common audiences we see amongst our customers. I want to preface this by saying I know these names are very silly, but giving each persona a distinct name can help keep your team aligned as you're creating content. So without further ado, here is our first persona, which is Warehouse Wendy, representing production or manufacturing employees. And a persona like Warehouse Wendy often needs things like operational clarity, workplace safety information, and performance visibility. Our next persona, IT Ian. IT Ian represents IT professionals and systems administrators with needs like security awareness, change management information, or system performance tracking like tickets, resolutions, and uptime. Our next persona is HR Hannah. This could represent someone from an HR team or an internal communications lead, and their needs likely surround providing company-wide communications, things like policy updates and announcements. They're also focused on employee engagement and HR process timelines, like important upcoming deadlines. Our next persona, Customer Conner. Customer Conner represents on-site visitors or potential customers whose needs surround things like wayfinding and orientation, service awareness like value propositions and product offerings, and status updates for things like wait times and support availability. Our last example persona is Student Sally. Student Sally represents parents on school or university campuses. And a persona like Student Sally would likely need information on academic scheduling, campus life updates, and well-being resources.
So far, we've covered the why and the who. Time to go over the what, the content itself. So you can have clear goals and you can understand your audience, but if your content isn't compelling, it's pretty easy to lose them. So this is where we can introduce the concept of needs versus wants. In an ideal world, the content that your audience needs is the same thing as what they want, but sometimes it's not the same. So finding a balance between the two is very important. And I'll chat through this in terms of the same 5 mini personas that Kaylee just took you through. She just took you through their needs, but what do they want? And what's going to make them look at the screen? Again, we're starting with Warehouse Wendy. So she might need safety tips and reminders, but she'd probably be more likely to notice color-coded dashboards for performance and safeties or visual countdowns, something like the classic 12 days without an incident. Something like that may draw her to the screen. Next, we have IT Ian. He needs cybersecurity reminders to be shown for employees, but what he may be more drawn to is something like a security breach simulation video. HR Hannah, she likely needs things like important enrollment deadlines on screen, but I'm sure what would get her excited are things like a poll or trivia around workplace culture. Next, Customer Connor, he needs information on the products that are available, but I'm sure he'd be drawn to something like a flashy sale or a real life use case story from other customers. And last but not least, we will go to Student Sally. She needs event calendars, but what may draw her to the screen is something like content formatted like a TikTok in a short form video. So that will really get her looking to the screen for the information. So that really takes us through the examples of needs versus wants, but we want to make these examples relevant to our platform itself. So how can you accomplish this in ScreenCloud? Well, a great way is by using zone layouts. So you'll see here multiple zones, right? And so your main zone can really be that need to know information. So you really need your employees to know cybersecurity reminders, safety alerts, metrics, events that are coming up, enrollment dates, things like that. But what's going to draw their attention? For example, going back to IT Ian, I'm sure he wants to see the needs to see the cybersecurity reminders on the screen, but maybe he's a really big football fan. So we have some sports scores on the side there to draw his attention to the screen. You can also use the bottom ticker for this as well with maybe important news. Other things you could include is maybe spotlight of employees. So if people know that they'll see themselves on the screen or their peers, they're more likely going to look to the screen to notice those things. But in the meantime, your main zone really has that information that they need to digest. So let's continue on the what by talking about design principles. You want your content to be shown in a way that can be easily understood and processed by your audience. And so we really wanted to simplify this into 3 basic principles: being brief, visual, and relevant. So with this, we've given you a couple ways you can achieve each one, but obviously there's going to be multiple ways you can. So let's start by being brief. And a good way you could do this is by applying the rule of 3s, not sharing more than 3 ideas on a screen. And here you'll see a before and after of some examples, and that'll be for each of these. So to start, for being brief, you see here on the left, there's a lot of words on the screen to start. It's pretty hard to read, a lot of ideas being thrown out there, and nothing really drawing attention to the screen. Whereas on the right, you see this is a little bit reimagined, and there's really three main points of call to action, I guess you could say. So there's the title, there's the main information that's summarized into short form that they can digest pretty quickly. And then lastly, a call to action here with the QR code. Next, let's talk about being bold and being visual. So a good way you can be visual is by being bold. And ways you can achieve this is by big fonts, bold visuals, contrasting colors. And this example is very similar to the first one. So the first one also did not have contrasting colors. There was a lot of words, same as this one. A lot of words on the screen. It's not very bold. It's something that maybe you would see pinned on a bulletin board instead. And so what is helpful is by doing what's on the right. So they've really leaned into their company colors. And so you see the words are less. It really summarizes the key information, uses bold words for what the most important information is to take in. And then lastly, you have, again, that call to action. If you need them to know all the rest of the information, they can scan a QR code. Lastly, you need to be relevant. This one is really, really, really important. Keep your content fresh. Update your content as frequently as possible. So here you see two examples. If your employees or your customers know that they're going to be seeing content from back in October last year and it's August this year, they know that the screen is not reliable information, that they need to go elsewhere to find the information they need to know. And you don't want that to get into their head. So the way to avoid this is just by ensuring that your content's scheduled to expire or to get updated. And so here on the right, you see that this content was scheduled and it's relevant for August. And so doing that really helps. When you follow these design principles and strike a balance between what your audience needs versus what they'll notice, your content can really, really land with greater impact. And then one last tip I can give for the ScreenCloud platform itself is our Quick Post app. If you haven't used it yet, it is a great, great way to achieve this. I'm sure not all of us are design gurus. I know I'm not. So what you can do is, if you have that 500-word PDF, you can upload that into our Quick Post app, and the app will extract and summarize and craft that information into a post that'll look great, be visually compelling, and be fit for screen.
So now we've covered the why, the who, and the what, but now we want to talk about the where and the when. And we're going to group these together because they're heavily related. First, let's talk about screen location. Screen location can have a big impact on whether or not your content is seen, but it's often not as thought out as other factors like your audience or the content itself. Screens being visible and legible is paramount to ensuring the content is reaching your audience. Here are some stats to consider. Legibility drops by over 60% when font size is too small for the viewer's distance. Take that back to the key design principle Jigisha mentioned earlier about being visual. Additionally, signage at eye level yields 2 times more engagement than signage placed above or below sightlines. So as you can see, location does play a role. And where content appears often goes hand in hand with when people see it. And once you understand where people are, it becomes easier to think about when they'll see your content and when it'll actually have the greatest impact. Let's consider 3 common areas we see screens being placed every day. First, let's start with hallways. Screens in hallways often get short glances. You have a small window to capture someone's attention as they walk by. So we recommend using bold visual cues to aid with drawing attention to those screens. Another common area for screens is in break rooms. With break rooms, you tend to see longer dwell times, and that means that break room screens are great for deeper stories or longer form content because you'll have the audience's attention for longer. Finally, we have warehouse screens. The dwell time in front of warehouse screens can vary depending on what is going on at that particular warehouse. However, given that warehouse environments can have more hazards or safety requirements than other job settings, these are great screens to share content focused on compliance, safety, or shipped logistics. And there are a lot of tools available in ScreenCloud that can aid with scheduling your content so you're not having to worry about updating it constantly. The first tool is called Set Availability, which allows you to set the date range that a particular content item is available to display. If you set the availability for an item, it will not display on your screens outside of that availability window, even if the content is still applied in a channel or a playlist that you're actively displaying. Another scheduling option is available through channels. If you access the channel, you can schedule specific content items to only play on certain days of the week or at certain times, in addition to being able to set that availability window. Looking at this example on screen, this content is scheduled to only play on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to 2 p.m. So it would only be displayed on those times and would not be displayed on the times that are outside of those windows. Both of these scheduling features allow you to schedule content in advance, so you don't have to worry about making continuous changes throughout the day and throughout the week. So as we're thinking about setting content intentionally and intentionally placing your screens, one great example that we've seen is with Roar Gym. The gym took a period to observe who was attending their classes, where they tended to convene, at what times, and how long they tended to stay there. Based on this, Roar added screens in areas with higher dwell times and intentionally scheduled content at specific times of the day. This ended up looking like motivational client stories and transformational content on display during peak training hours, general gym updates and service offerings on screen for midday visitors, and messaging tailored for potential new clients and walk-ins on display in reception area screens to really welcome those potential new clients into the gym. Another example that we've seen is with one of our beverage distributor customers. They positioned screens around their time clocks and other areas employees tended to convene before the start of their shift. Not only are these screens highly visible to their employees, but they're intentionally scheduling safety reminders and information when employees are punching in for their shifts. Having that type of content in that area has helped create visual cues for their employees to keep safety top of mind as they start their shifts. By being intentional about where and when content is displayed, you can meet your audience where they are both physically and mentally for maximum effectiveness. So now we've gone through all 5 W's, and we want to see how this all comes together. We've considered our objective or our why, our target audiences or our who, our content or our what, our screen's physical locations or our where, and the timing and scheduling of content or our when. If we combine these items together, we have a framework for our content strategy. And using this content strategy framework, you can develop campaigns that go after your objectives. Here are a few examples of strategies similar to what we've assisted customers create recently. The first campaign example we have is Safety Starts Here, with the objective of reinforcing a proactive safety culture. The target audiences for this campaign were manufacturing or production employees and warehouse teams, with key locations for screen placement being areas near time clocks, loading docks, or equipment zones. The content was comprised of things like safety tips, daily compliance reminders, and incident-free countdowns. And the content was rotated daily or by shift, depending on what would be most pertinent for the employees working on site. We're looking at the examples on our screen. We can see we have a 3-zoned layout here. The main zone is comprised of safety reminders, reminding employees that they must be wearing PPE while on the job site. In our portrait zone to the side, we have our count up timer, which is counting up the number of days since the last incident. This is a great reminder to employees that keeping safety top of mind and continuing to make safe choices can allow for them to continue to go more days without an accident. The ticker at the bottom has safety reminders for employees throughout the day, such as a reminder to drink water or take breaks periodically. Our next campaign was Customer Connection Hub, with the objective of enhancing the visitor experience with timely information. Our target audiences here were clients, guests, or prospects, and key locations for screen placement included things like lobbies and check-in stations that would allow the screens to greet potential customers or prospects, as well as product demo areas or areas that they tended to dwell for longer. The content can be comprised of welcome messages, wait time displays, service benefits, and testimonials. And the content can update live, or it can be timed to rotate during specific periods throughout the day. If we look at our example here, in our main zone, we have a welcome message for visitors with a QR code informing them they should use that to check in, helping to streamline the process. On our side zone, we have a waiting queue. So someone that's waiting for vehicle maintenance, for example, knows how long they're going to be waiting until their vehicle is finished. Our information at the bottom is pretty basic, but it's information that could be applicable for any of these audiences. So things like the weather or the time. And our third campaign example is Workplace Wire, with an objective of increasing awareness and engagement with HR-led initiatives. The target audience for this campaign was all staff, and key locations for screen placement were areas like break rooms, HR offices, and collaboration spaces, areas where these employees would tend to spend time or hang out. Content types included things like internal job postings, benefit deadlines, and referral programs. And the emphasis was really about ensuring that the content was updated on a weekly basis to ensure that upcoming events were always timely. Looking at our example, we have a main zone here with information and a QR code that employees can scan to sign up for career coaching lessons. In our side zone, we actually have a quick post example referencing a referral bonus that's available to employees if they refer someone for an open position. And at the bottom, we have a custom ticker with general reminders that it would be helpful for the employees to know, such as open enrollment opening on August 8th, or that there is an all hands today at 5 p.m. With these campaigns, all 5 W's align in each example with one goal, a target audience, a clear message, the right screens, and perfect.
Now, I just want to wrap up with a couple common pitfalls and ways that you can avoid them. So let's start with the same content everywhere. I think I drove this point home a little bit, but really having the same content everywhere can be a downfall, because let's say that you have content that is the same in a hallway versus a break room. The way that your audience will interact with it is going to be really, really different. They will have less time in the hallway to see that content. So if you're putting up content that maybe takes a little bit more time to digest there, it's probably going to lose its messaging. Whereas taking in earlier the concept we talked about with the 3 principles of bold visuals, they'll be able to digest that quickly as they walk by. Whereas in the break room, they'll have more dwell time and be able to sit and look at this information. Also, content getting stale. Again, another point we've driven home, but you don't want your content to get stale. You don't want it to be outdated, because that can really, really lose your audience. They're not going to look to the screen for information that's relevant. They're going to know that they need to go somewhere else or go back to asking their manager about information and things like that. So just ensuring your content is up to date. And lastly, if there's no owner or calendar for the information, that can really throw off your content as well. So if there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you have a lot of people owning what's going on there onto the screens at once, that can really throw it off, because maybe a lot of the times what happens is someone thinks, oh, they're taking care of it, and then it doesn't get taken care of. And also a calendar, another point we've talked about. So really scheduling your content, setting those expiration dates in your studio account to ensure that the content, once it's no longer available or no longer relevant, it's taken off the screen. Some things you can try instead: assigning content champions by department. So this could be IT and HR, maybe someone from the health and safety team. Each team is responsible for the content that goes on there, but you could go a step beyond that. You could assign content to each team within your company. So let's say you give a content champion within sales and they try to put in content that really represents their team and gets it out there about what they're doing day to day. So then they know, oh, I can look to the screen and be recognized, or I can find content that's relevant to me, but then you're increasing awareness throughout the company about them. Again, schedule messaging, making sure that your content is relevant for when it's happening. So let's say that your warehouse employees have a 9 a.m. health and safety meeting every Tuesday, making sure that during that time you have scheduled health and safety reminders to really back up what is being told to them. And then lastly, strategically placing the content for this where the screen is located. So again, earlier I talked about a hallway versus a break room, but even thinking about how far is the screen from where the person is viewing it. So if the screen's right in front of them at eye level, it's going to be different content from, let's say the screen is up on the ceiling in a warehouse and it can't really be near the equipment. Well, that's pretty far. And so you're not going to have a lot of words on that. You're going to go for those bold visuals and things like that. So just really ensuring that your content is relevant for where the screen is placed.
As we've talked today, we've gone through how you can develop the framework for your own content strategy. But if you feel that your organization could develop or could benefit from more guidance or support, our upcoming service, Screen Strategist, could be the answer. With Screen Strategist, our professional services team works hand in hand with your organization's content team to maximize the impact of your on-screen content. We'll help your organization build your brand strategy with signage experts and get access to tools that can help craft the compelling signage that is essential for your audiences. Throughout the process, we'll help you develop in-house campaigns, similar to what we saw earlier, that multi-thread your communications and craft impactful ROI measurements to ensure you're getting the most value for your investment. As I mentioned, this service is coming soon. So if you're interested in more information on that or any of the other features that we've discussed today, please reach out to your customer success team for more information. And with that, we are through our presentation. We'd love to answer any questions that might have come up throughout the presentation. So if you have one, feel free to drop it in the chat and we will go through those. Looks like we have a question about a recording for today's session. I believe we will have a recording of today's session and we'll share that out along with the slides that we presented on. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat now. That's a great question, Maria. How do you measure the effectiveness of your on-screen content? Unfortunately, we are not at a place where we can track eyes to screens, but there are a few tools available in the platform that can help to track and ensure that you have information or that your information is being received and digested by your target audiences. One of the best examples is with QR codes. So within the platform, you can apply QR codes either via some of the applications that are available or via Canvas, our in-app editing tool. And QR codes are a great way to scan or to see scans on particular content items that have been shared out. So that will actually give you measurement data that you can track and ensure certain content items are getting the traction that you're looking for.
I see we had another question around time between slides on a screen, just making sure it's not too fast or too slow. So this really, really goes back to depending on where your screens are located and what content is on screen. So let's say that it's something that's really easily digestible, going back to that bold visuals and not a lot of words. That can really be pretty quick. It doesn't have to stay on screen for very long, but and let's say it's in like high traffic area. So if it's located somewhere in a hallway, you want that to be cycling through pretty quickly. Whereas if it's longer content, so something that you really want them to digest, maybe a health and safety reminder or something about cybersecurity awareness, you want that to be on there a bit longer, especially if it's like somewhere where your audience is pretty stationary, a break room, a waiting area, but you still want to avoid cramming in too much information. Cool. I think that wraps up our questions. If anyone has anything else, feel free to chat it in. But otherwise, we really, really appreciated you taking the time to join this. And yeah, as Kaylee mentioned, the recording will be available as well as the slides. So yeah, thank you guys so, so much.
Everyone.